Everybody, this is Mark Smith, the host of Digital Roughnecks, and I'm here with a special episode to comment on a recent article by the Environmental Defense Fund, or EDF, called Differentiated Gas, Nothing But Hot Air Without These 5 Criteria. Now, this episode is sponsored by Connect.AI Solutions for Energy. So, first of all, what is differentiated gas? Okay, it's important that it's being marketed with different names, including responsibly sourced gas or certified gas, or in fact, S&P has a methane performance certificate, or an MPC. Now, all of these happen to be sold on the expansive voluntary exchange as carbon offsets. So the big idea is that you can generate a premium for your natural gas if you can prove your methane intensity. Problem with differentiated gas that they point out in the article is the lack of robust measurement, reporting, and verification standards, limited coverage across firms, the potential for firms to cherry pick which sites to certify within their portfolio. In short, EDF is concerned about potential greenwashing. What are these 5 criteria? Well, number 1, EDF says, hey, it needs to meet regulatory requirements. Number 2, it needs to meet OGMP 2.0 level 5, which is source and site level measurements. Must be third-party verified. The methane intensity measured, actual measured, not emission factors, needs to be 0.2% or less. And the certification needs to include measured site, no cherry picking. Okay? Now let me go through each one of these 5 criteria and explain. So number 1, meets regulatory requirements. In a previous episode, which I'll link to in the notes, I went through the current EPA Quad O-A, as well as the proposed Quad O-B and C, and even compared it to Colorado rules. I'm not going to go into that detail today, but I'm going to link to that if you want to get into that level of detail. But in short, where the EPA is at this level. Okay, when you think about lower resolution or higher resolution, EPA requires component or source level inspections on a periodic basis. And they define all that in Quad O-B and C and in Appendix K, where they define how to use an OGI camera with a human inspector. And that has to be done in Quad O-B and C every quarter. That's what EPA calls BSER, Best System of Emission Reduction. Doesn't require quantification other than testing the camera out. Now, these other levels above here, for example, site level, that you can do with drones and continuous point sensors, they can check something at the site. But again, they're still going to require you to send the FLIR guy in, or the person with a handheld, to do the source level inspection. Same with site level, where you're looking with planes or that's flying through and they can see site level at a lower frequency. And then satellites, they can look at an asset level and cover a wide area, but very little detail, right? In fact, your entire site might be a few pixels. Now, to get down to this level, which is where Clean Connect is at, it's site, source, component level, continuous monitoring. Okay, so continuous OGI, and it does detection quantification, and it can replace Quad O-B/C and meets OGMP level 5 because it could do source and site level. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. Here's an example of Clean Connect that does source ID and auto tagging down at the equipment level. Okay. Now, number 2 is OGMP 2.0 level 5. Well, what are these levels? Okay, well, level 1 is venture asset reporting. You're just giving us a 1 emission number for your whole entire venture. 2 is emissions categories. So you're using categories from these IOGP and their generic emission factors. Then emission source level, which is pretty much what you're reporting to the EPA. Those are emission factors, not actual measurements, generic emission factors. What they're talking about is level 4 and 5 is where you can do specific source and site level actual measurements. That's what it takes to hit level 5, is source and site level. Okay? Now, third-party verifier mean the operator can't certify themselves. Must be verified by a third party using human and/or AI verification. The methodology should be government certified. In other words, how do you verify the verifiers? Well, I think It should be done with a Colorado AIM approved instrument measurement method or EPA AML alternative means of emission limitation. Number 4, methane intensity, measured, not emission factors like EPA requires. So EPA uses emission factors, not actual measurements. In fact, there's no place to even include actual measurements with your emission inventory that you require to turn in. Now, OGCI, Oil and Gas Climate Initiative members, have agreed to a 0.2% methane intensity, but they don't specify using actual measurements. S&P Methane Performance Certificate, they make you get down to 0.1% methane intensity. Now, GTI Veritas has proposed a protocol for actual measurements, and many producers have signed on to this. Now, number 5, certification needs to include measured sites, no cherry picking. So some certifications, they only require 50% of your sites have to have some sort of continuous monitoring, yet they'll certify all your gas, even if it's not measured. Okay. Some will even use emission factors and use statistical sampling to show that all of your gas has the same methane intensity. Both of those things, EDF says, no, those don't count. Okay. Buyers want proof of methane intensity and a guarantee of origin on each MMBTU of gas that they're buying. That's where the standard is going, actual measurement down to the specific energy level. Connect, our sponsor, is the only solution that I'm aware of that meets all 5 of the EDF's criteria. Number 1, it meets the regulatory requirement because it succeeds Quad OBC and Colorado's Reg 7, so it can literally be used to replace your LDAR requirement. It meets OGMP level 5 because it can measure gas at the source and the site level. Must be third-party verified. Connect can autonomously verify emissions at the component level using computer vision, and they've applied for a Colorado AIM application. As I mentioned, verifying the verifiers. Methane intensity, we can use computer vision to autonomously measure and certify gas to the S&P MPC standard, which is 0.1%. Certification needs to include measured site, no cherry picking. So we measure emissions at the source and site level. You can only earn S&P MPCs for the site that's been measured. The Prove Zero NFT includes all the data to prove it. And I'll explain what that means. So let's say you're a producer and you want to sell energy certificates, okay, to carbon traders, hedge fund buyers. These are financial buyers. So we use computer vision. It looks at your site, IoT telemetry data to get the throughput. Then you can have the methane over the throughput. It runs through the AI machine models to produce an NFT certificate, which can then be used to create the S&P Methane Performance Certificate, which can be sold on the expansive exchange for a premium. So if you're interested in more information, you go to cleanconnect.ai.